to the LC Transfer Room live stream. Today we are going with our Transfer Central. My name is Rigo. Today I'm joined by Owen, Neil, and Kev. Welcome all. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
All good, mate.
Awesome. I hope
Yeah.
everyone's doing well and getting excited as far as the World Cup coming to a conclusion and getting back on with Liverpool kicking off. We know they played today earlier in the friendly, losing 3-1 to Lyon. Unfortunately, Elliott did come off with an injury as well, and we also are dealing with the Luis Diaz injury, which kind of leads us into our transfer central topics. First off, I want to, say rest in peace to Grant Wall, who unfortunately passed away covering the World Cup. We don't know all the details just yet. Hopefully there was no foul play involved, but from an American perspective, I just want to say that I've been a fan of his writing for many, many years, and it's a great loss on our end here on the American side as far as football coverage and someone who definitely popularized the sport here in America. But going into our Transfer Central, we have 4 huge targets that Liverpool are looking at. And 3 we're going to dive in very deeply into. They would be Enzo Fernandez, Jude Bellingham, as well as Sofyan Amrabat. To kind of lead off, we'll go with the topic of choice, Enzo Fernandez, who's been lighting it up with Argentina, and they're currently in the semifinal. I'll go over to you, Owen, for your thoughts on how he would fit and how realistic a transfer that would be for us.
Well, I've heard reports that there's a pre-agreement in place. I'm not kind of too sure how reliable that is, but if that's true, then that's massive because we all know we need a midfielder and we're all kind of banking on Jude Bellingham to come to Liverpool. But even if he does come, I think we probably need another midfielder as well. So yeah, like just having him in because players are going to be leaving at the end of the season, and yeah, it's this sort of time of the season as well. When we start up again, players who've been playing in the World Cup, players have not been playing game time as well, which is going to mean they're going to be sort of lacking match fitness, going to put up with injuries and stuff. So yeah, I think it's really, really important that even if we get him in January, or in the summer, I think either way, it's a massive, massive result for Liverpool. And yeah, from what we've seen him do for Argentina this World Cup, I think he would be a perfect player to sign for Liverpool.
So yeah, as you were saying, that there's been rumors of a pre-agreement. I'm not sure how well-founded those are. Concrete numbers, we do know that he has $120 million release clause there. Kev, what are your thoughts on him so far? I'm pretty sure you've caught a little bit of him in Argentina's World Cup matches.
Absolutely superb. One of Benfica's best starlets this season, and one of the reasons why Benfica are doing well this season. Shame we never brought him in last season. I think there may have been an opportunity for us to even bring him in. He's everything I'd like to see in our midfield. Dynamic, centre mid, can play defensive if needs be. Very good player on and off the ball, and his goal in the World Cup for Argentina the other week, fantastic. He'll be a delight. It'll be amazing if we can get him. $120, I'd have that, Rigo, but 120 million kind of makes me think if a pre-agreement's in place that there's something maybe to do with the takeover, maybe a bit further along than what we're expecting, and they could be lining up a big, huge window for us based on who comes in. But fantastic for me. I've been raving about him all season. This season for me, he's been a starter for Benfica, as I said. But absolutely brilliant if we could bring him in. What's your thoughts, Rigo?
For me, it'd be no question for me. He's 21 years old, and all his stats are just absolutely incredible. His progressive passing per 90 and passing completion percentage is just outstanding. He's completing 87% of his passes in the for Benfica. Progressive passes 9.5 per 90. and he's just absolutely controlling the game from the midfield on a decent defensive perspective as well. His tackles 77 percentile, 2.5 per game. The goals and assists, those just to kind of temper expectations, we shouldn't expect a ton of goals or assists from him, just because of the role that he does play. He's more of I would say, a modern day Thiago in that respect, that he can be a deep line playmaker and connect, from the back to the front with the attackers. He certainly seems, beyond missing that penalty in Argentina's match, he certainly seems at 21 years old, mature enough to compete at a high level and be a very big contributor for all-star caliber squads. Neil, what about you? What do you think? Should we go for him if it's at all possible? And would 120 million or something negotiate that down a little bit?
Yeah, so I think in terms of his age, his playing style, what he would offer to the team, I don't think there's any doubts that he would be a very good signing. The figure quoted, 120 million, does scare me a little bit because I think it's a lot of money, and I think we've got quite a lot of work to do in that area of the pitch where we're probably going to need 2 or 3 players and possibly an additional forward as well. So, if someone said money was unlimited, I'd say, yep, tomorrow let's sign. My only concern is the price tag, and anything for me sort of 60, 70 upwards, and it's getting steep. So no questions in terms of what he'll offer. Only question for me is the price tag. We seem to hesitate sometimes. We wait for a player to prove himself in a European league before we're willing to, or one of the bigger European leagues before we're willing to take a gamble. I think we've seen it with Haaland. We now see it with this guy who only cost Benfica 10, 12 million, and he's been outstanding for them. So yeah, I think if anything, it'll be a summer transfer because I think they're still in the Champions League, aren't they? So.
Yeah, Neil, I was going to say the exact same thing then as you about kind of we keep missing the moment for these players just before they kind of rise into the scene. Well, just as they rise into the scene, we kind of then show our interest, and that's then when it's like 100, 120 million. See it with Darwin Núñez, and we're kind of doing it more now with this since Michael Edwards has left. So maybe we kind of need to go back to the sort of basics there. I don't know if that's something you guys agree with or not.
Yeah, I do. As we know, Liverpool's transfer strategy is kind of mirrored the Moneyball transfer strategy, which is finding these rough gems and kind of bringing them in at a decent price and then bringing up their level or turning them into stars. And kind of harkening back to Klopp's comments that he would have liked to take more gambles in the transfer market. I think this is where we can kind of point towards taking early gambles on some of these younger players who perhaps haven't proven themselves in one of the top 5 leagues yet. But, knowing that if they do prove themselves in the top 5 leagues, we're going to have so much competition to get them to put their name pen to paper. So I think that's we need to expand that a little bit more and try and unearth these gems sooner rather than later, so we're not paying through the nose for a talent just like Enzo Fernandez, or in the chat, I know someone mentioned Kvaratskhelia, who was only acquired for around $10 million for Napoli. But I think we're all in agreement here. Enzo Fernandez, bring him in as soon as possible, but have to consider the price there because as we all know, we do have a big midfield transformation that's waiting for us, and one player isn't gonna solve that, unfortunately. But thumbs up all around. Moving along to this player you might have heard about, Jude Bellingham, starring role in the World Cup run for England. Unfortunately, came to a conclusion yesterday. That Tottenham Spurs player just moonballed that penalty shot to tie it. Very sorry about that. But Jude Bellingham, what about you guys? Do it in January if we can, right? What do you say, Neil?
Yep, I don't think, again, Very, very little downside in trying to bring Jude Bellingham to the club. I'd love to have him in January. I think he's been outstanding for England, other than the second game, I think, against the USA. He was a bit quieter, but I think he's got the potential to do anything he wants in the game, and I see no downside in bringing him to the club. And I would be prepared to pay big money for him, because I just think he could do anything any job you asked him to in midfield. There's a bit of Stevie G about him, I think. So for me, it's an absolute yes.
Absolutely. Kev, let's go with your thoughts on Jude, and how realistic would it be perhaps to bring him in January?
Who's this Jude? I don't know nothing about him. No, he's I would love to bring him in January if we could, if it's possible. I think Klopp would like to bring him in sooner rather than later, but I do think it will be a summer investment. And I totally agree with what Neil said. I would pay everything for him. I would go out and get him, because you've got a player there for the next 10, 11, 12, 13 years in your midfield, and you build your midfield around him within it. And it's a no-brainer for me. It's 100%. I think it's perfectly clear that he's, for a 19-year-old, and the way he talks and the way he speaks, is very mature for his age. And even his comments about Henderson, I know he hasn't had the best of times with us recently, but to stand up with him, it says a lot about him as a player and as a person. I've seen comments he's made at Dortmund as well, of not going to. It's not all about the money and the car. It's about leaving a legacy at a club. It fits perfectly, like Klopp fitted perfectly for us as manager. So I undoubtedly think it will be done. I'd love it if it happens if we sign him in January, we win the league and we win the Champions League. That's how big it is. But for me, I think it's summer when we get him.
Yeah, and Owen pointed that out earlier, or I believe Neil did, with regards to Champions League football, and Borussia Dortmund is still in the Champions League, so I'm not sure how amenable they would be to losing Jude in January, but I think we need to go all in for him. What do you say, Owen?
Yeah, to be fair, we've been saying it over and over again on this channel, haven't we, now? And I don't think there's any sort of alternative for us at this stage, and just seeing him at England's training ground, just constantly just hanging out with Trent and Endo. It's like, it kind of feels like it's enforcement, or kind of like they're forcing him to do it at this stage, really. But yeah, it's probably
blink if you're hostage, Jude.
Yeah, giving him hostage, definitely. But yeah, it'll be a really, really weird one if it doesn't happen now, after everything that's been said and done. I can't see him going to any other Premier League team than Man City, if I'm being completely honest. And then I think Real Madrid's probably the other big team that is realistic for Jude. But yeah, I genuinely can't think about what would happen if we did lose. Well, if we didn't get him, because I think it would totally mess up all of our plans. As Kev said, we're going to build a midfield around him and Harvey Elliott. So yeah, just to have him in that midfield, and 19 years of age, it's absolutely mental. And I don't think he played particularly well last night, if I'm being completely honest. But yeah, he's been unbelievable for England during this World Cup.
Yeah, totally agree. I think he cemented himself as a star during this World Cup run, shown that he was a leader on the pitch, and just totally shown why all these teams are clamoring to sign him. Looking at some of these counting stats, a lot of these on FB Ref, he's showing up in the 90th percentile across the top 5 leagues for midfielders, and I think he's taken his game up a level this season as well. Perhaps a little bit more of an advanced role with Borussia has led him to actually put in product to his quality, scoring goals and assisting as well. And I think those late runs into the box and it will just bring so much to Liverpool if we were able to acquire him. And if it doesn't turn out, I think this would be one of the real true heartbreaks as far as Liverpool fans are concerned, because all the signs are there that, you know, he has friendships already ready-made on the squad, is a leader, and you know how much flirting can happen without, you know, it coming to fruition, right? So I definitely think he's other teams are taking note of that as well, that Liverpool are probably in the driver's seat, and perhaps they should start focusing their moves elsewhere if they're looking for a midfielder. So I do hope it comes to fruition, and obviously I would love for it to occur in January, just for the simple fact that we need a midfielder right now, not in summer. We need to make sure that we stay in the top four and make deep runs in the Champions League and the other tournaments that we are in. So I'd be all in for him now. If we're going to pay that amount in summer, why not pay it now? What's the difference? And you know, the only difference is that we'll get him in sooner and help the squad a lot sooner. So do it now, please, FSG. If you're trying to sell this club, it'll be much more attractive having a 19-year-old English star on the team who's, you know, can take that midfield and make it his own. You know,
just on that,
to compete with him.
No, just on that, Rigo. Sorry to interrupt. If you bring him in, it's more of an asset if you bring him in than if you don't bring him in. So you're not going to lose 100 million with him. You're going to gain that as well. So, and it adds more to your CV if you start bringing players like him in. It's more of an asset more than anything else, and it adds more to the actual price of the actual club for me if you're bringing a player of his quality in.
Yep, it removes a big question mark as far as quality of the squad if you're looking to move to sell it. And obviously, you have a star waiting to explode on the world stage, and obviously in the Premier League, an English player on Liverpool, one of the hugest teams in the world. What more can you ask, except, you know, for Calvin Ramsey to change his number? All right, so Jude, please, if you're listening, doubt it very much. We need you. We need you at Anfield. Come on. And moving on to our next transfer target, and there's been a lot of smoke with this one as well. A lot of reports coming out that Liverpool's scouts have been on him since the World Cup, and that we've been eyeing him since last summer as well. And that would be Fiorentina's Sofyan Amrabat, currently starring for Morocco, who's continuing their incredible run into the semifinals, knocking out Spain and subsequently Portugal as well. Ronaldo tears, soothing my soul. Owen, what are your thoughts on Sofyan and his fit into the squad, and should we make a move for him?
Yeah, to be fair, I haven't seen a lot of him. But yeah, like you've seen the World Cup that he's got what it takes to be a Liverpool player. He's very dynamic, and yeah, I think just in the minute, any midfielders for Liverpool, and it sounds ridiculous, but yeah, we are extremely short in that department, and we're also short in attack in the minute when you look at it, because yeah, but with Luis Diaz and Jota both injured, I think you saw today we're not really we haven't got that depth that we'd like in an ideal situation. But yeah, bring him in. What's the worst that can happen? I don't think it would be too much of a price tag, actually. I think I read about 30-40 million earlier. Obviously, his performance in the World Cup could easily now double that. But yeah, I think if it's not a train we've already missed, then go for it.
What about you, Kev? What have you seen from Amrabat during the World Cup, and should we make a move for him at that price point, 30 to 35 million euros?
I'll be honest, I knew diddly squat about him as much as what I knew about Salif Diao and Ed Diouf back in 2002. My apprehension of bringing a player in from a World Cup form is that they don't back it up, and we end up with once you've gone down the El Diouf and the Salif Diao route once, you're twice shy when it comes to buying players on a World Cup form. It's not one I would be into. However, I've looked at him and what he's done for Morocco, and he's integral to the way they play. His tenaciousness, his pressing. would make me feel as though he would fit in and gel straight away with coming in. My only apprehension with him is looking at his stats for Fiorentina is that he's had 7 yellow cards already, and he's already had 1 suspension. So the opportunity of bringing someone in is great. However, his discipline would need to be a little bit better than what it is. Saying that though, for Morocco, he's ticking all the boxes if you're looking at the World Cup. But I'd like to make I don't know whether 26 million euros would be sufficient to take a gamble on him. But as Owen says, we need someone in who can do a job for us, and he seems to be a bit right field. Someone that we've already said on here that it wouldn't be someone that we know is going to come in. It'll be someone that we haven't mentioned, and it fits a Klopp's kind of style of bringing someone in that we haven't even said on here in the summer. Like, so I don't know. 26 seems all right. Bring him in. Let's see what happens. I may be wrong.
All right. And what about you, Neil? Your thoughts on Amrabat?
So I think out of the 3 we've discussed, he's the most likely January signing. If I'm honest, price tag probably fits as well, and it seems that he might be keen for the move. I think there were rumours of interest from us prior to the World Cup. And I think someone mentioned in the chat that Klopp had reportedly spoken to him or his representatives prior to the World Cup. I think Spurs were also interested as well. So I think his status within the game was growing, but I think it's now exploded based on the performances from Morocco. Looks great, looks mobile, which is something that I think we're severely lacking in midfield. But what are we looking at here? Are we looking at someone that's going to be a rotational player with Fabinho in the 6? Or are we looking for him to play more advanced? I'd assumed it was as a rotation with or competition for Fabinho, which wouldn't really address, the right-sided midfield. I don't want to call it an issue, but I think it's an area that we need to strengthen. So for me, for that price tag, I think he looks to be worth the money, and I think he's a realistic get for January as well. So it's a thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm on board with you there, Neil. Some players take longer to develop, and also it's dependent not just on themselves, but team situations and tactics. From what I see on an individual basis, I think he's very suitable for our squad. He's a runner. He's very good in possession and has really good defensive numbers as well. So I think he, at that price point also, I think it's a fairly low-cost gamble on a player who is productive and has qualities that certainly Klopp can use in the midfield. I think he would provide some level of competition for Fabinho, even though he's only 5'8", as mentioned. His tackling numbers, as well as his blocks and things of that nature, are fairly good. And I think perhaps raising the level of the players that are around him as well would allow him to shine even more. So with that price point, 30 to 35, and coming to the end of his contract, and him seeing that he's in the eye of higher quality teams that Fiorentina, I think, probably would lead him to a move. And as you mentioned, it would be the most realistic January one for us. So I'm all on board for bringing him on. He's shown quality at the World Cup, and I think it's a low cost gamble to actually bring on. So I'm all for it. Next on our topic list here is, unfortunately, we have seen that Luis Diaz has had to undergo a knee operation and will likely be out until March. We were expecting him to come along in December and help us kickstart our second half of the season. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. Jota, he's out until February. So at the moment, we are very, very light on the attacking front. Going into our January window a couple of weeks away, I think we definitely need to start targeting forward options. And we've lined up a couple of our own shouts for you. I'm going to go over to Kev for his first one. He's raring to go. Who would be your shout for?
I'm not really.
Forward for us?
For me, I've gone a bit left wing, left field for mine, and it's probably not one that many would regard as an option for us. And I think it's very unlikely he will. However, what I've seen of him and the way he's played this season, I think he's perfect for us, and he's a frustration that has been at the thorn of Liverpool for the past 2 seasons. He scored 4 goals against us. He plays for Brighton, and his name is Trossard. I think he is an exceptional player. I think he's playing well this season for Brighton. He's carried on from last season, and I think he's in the form of his life. I think he would do exceedingly well to come in and do what we want. He's tenacious. He's got that tenacity about him, and he can score goals. He scored more goals this season. He's got 7 goals already, near up to his 8 that he scored last season. He's got 3 assists for this season. He's a low risk. Bring someone in, end of his contract in June, bring him in now, 10, 15 million. You'll be able to sell him in a year's 2 time for 30, 45 million. You make your money on him if it doesn't work out. I think it'll be perfect for us going forward. And I can't see not. And every time I've seen him play, it's a pleasure to see him play. He's one of the few players who I've seen from opponents that I've actually I'd love him to be playing for us. I think he does a good job. His goals this season, he scored against Leicester, he scored against Chelsea, he scored against City. Why not give him a punt? That's my choice.
All right, so we have Leandro Trossard as Kev's shout for our January target to reinforce our front line. Neil, who would be your target?
I'm just looking at the chat. So this might not be a popular one, but I think my view is we need someone that's going to come in and hit the ground running. And based on the fact, similar to Trossard, that he's out of contract at the end of the season, I would say Wilfried Zaha. I think you'd get him relatively cheap. And I think he's Premier League proven and Premier League quality. I think he can add a lot. You wouldn't have any hesitation in throwing him into the team on the left side or even through the middle, because he's played through the middle for Palace as well, and him doing a good job for the team. So I would go for an experienced option. I think we've got youth to a certain extent in Carvalho coming through. Jota and Diaz are only mid-20s, so I think we can afford to add an experienced Premier League proven player. So Wilfried Zaha.
Any hesitations on the age there, or would you be looking to sign him, extend his contract once he does come up?
I think he's 30, so you'd probably have to bring him in on a 3-year deal. But I don't think he doesn't look like. I don't think he's a player that would, that would get into his early 30s and decline. I think physically he's looked after himself, and I think he deserves it. I think he deserves a chance at a big club again. I think it didn't work out for him at Manchester United. He's gone back to Crystal Palace, done really, really well, and I think he's worth a punt. And I think you'd get him relatively cheap, because I don't think Palace would. Palace would obviously want something for him, but I think because he's been so loyal to Palace and stayed there for so long, I think they'd like to look after him.
All right, so Wilfried Zaha as Neil's shout. Going to you, Owen.
It's a tough one, and I think Trossard from Kev, I think that's a really good shout. I didn't realise he was out of contract in the summer, but 10 to 15 mil, I think if you can get him for that, then that would be one of the signings of the decade, probably. I'm not even lying there or exaggerating. I think that's, maybe a bit of a to us, considering I think he's so crucial to their team. But yeah, if I'm going with another player, I'll go with a player who I've always been saying we should go for, and that's Jared Bowen. I think he's kind of dipped off a little bit this season, but that could also be kind of a blessing for us because it could help lower the price tag. But yeah, I just think he'll be really, really good. And I think when you look at our team, when everyone's fit, you have 2 really strong left wingers in Jota and Diaz. And yeah, you don't really want to add to that in a way. And then you've got Fabio Carvalho as well. So you don't want to move him any further down the pecking order. You've got Darwin Núñez and Firmino. yeah, they can both be a bit hit and miss at times, but yeah, both two really, really good players. And then you got Salah. After that, you've got literally nobody there. So I think having Jared Bowen, it would just complete that sort of forward line. He's a versatile player as well. So yeah, I don't think there's any reason why. Yeah, forgot about Bowen. I don't think there's any reason why you wouldn't go for Jared Bowen if the opportunity arose. But yeah, I think Zaha has an interesting one. I haven't really heard him mentioned, to be fair. So yeah, see what happens there.
But Bowen would probably be at least double the cost of the other two, wouldn't he? So
I wouldn't say double Trossard. I wouldn't say that.
I'd say he'd probably be on level with Trossard.
Yeah.
30, I think 30 you'd get him.
Really?
I think Bowen would be more. I think West Ham would demand more for Bowen.
Well, I certainly like that shout there, Owen. Left-footed player, English, helps us with our homegrown numbers. Premier League proven. As you mentioned, his form has dipped down this season compared to last, as far as being a focal point on offense. West Ham as a whole hasn't performed as well as last season as well, so that could be contributing also. But I think that would be a good addition to the squad. Certainly helps us back up Mohamed Salah, a player kind of in the same vein as well. Certainly not to Mo's level, but someone who can certainly replicate, at least tactically, what we're trying to do on the pitch there. So that's a very good shout, and not one I was expecting. So good on you there, Owen. For my shout, I'm going for a player from Ligue 1. And surprisingly, not a midfielder. Obviously, we're discussing forward options, but I would go for Martin Terrier, or Terrier, depending on what pronunciation you want to do. But if we're going with Terrier, it certainly fits his playing style. He's a very aggressive player, 6 foot. His age profile certainly fits into what we're looking for. He's 25 years old, soon to be 26. 8 goals on the season, 3 assists in 14 matches for Stade Rennais, which is the French club, which I probably butchered the pronunciation. But looking at his stats, and I've been keeping my eye on him for the past couple of seasons, apart from his offensive numbers, what certainly impresses me is his actual pressing. And as far as top 5 leagues pressing, he's in 92 percentile tackles for a forward player, making almost 2 per game, winning 1. Tackling dribblers, blocking shots, interceptions. He's averaging 0.83 per 90, which puts him at the 86th percentile. So we're looking at someone who can, and if you combine tackles and interceptions, he's in the 95th percentile. So if we're looking at him, he's certainly a player who can fit into what Bobby used to do for us as far as leading the press from the front. And he can play on either wing as well. He would add a dynamism on the offensive front, 6 foot, add some height to us for set pieces as well. And again, apart from his offensive numbers, his defensive acumen, I think, would certainly bring us up a notch there on the forward line to either start or come off the bench. And since his positional versatility allows him to play across the 3, I think he would be a perfect fit for us. And considering his age, I'm not sure on what his price point would be according to FB Ref. Actually, I should have gone to Transfer Market for his transfer valuation.
I'll look it up. I'll have a look for you.
I guess the venture around 30 million euros might get the job done for him, and I think he would just be outstanding for Liverpool. So that's my shout, Martin Terrier.
Yeah, 35 million euros according to Transfer Market.
Adds 30 on that then. 30-40 million on top of that.
So I think it'd definitely be a good shout, and then a player who can assist us this season, but also moving forward, and perhaps we might not need to re-sign Bobby for 2 to 3 years, as has been rumored that we'd be extending it to 2026. So very good job there. On the chat, just want to go back to you, Neil. We've had quite a bit of hullabaloo as far as your Zaha shout. A lot of people saying you should be kicked off the panel for that. And, and I'd like to say yes, I'm about to take you off the panel right now. No, I'm kidding. I would agree with you, Neil, that Zaha would be a great fit as far as Premier League proven and could come in and fill the role. My only concern there would be obviously extending him beyond 2023.
Yep.
And I just want to go through the chat real quick as well. A couple of other shots we may have missed from Albert, and a player that I'm surprised neither of us mentioned, young left-footed player making a name for himself in the Eredivisie, and also shine some light on himself at the World Cup, and that would be Mohamed Kudus, who was rumored to go to Everton in last summer's transfer window, but I think certainly would fit the mold for us at Liverpool. Left-footed player who I love. What do you guys think as far as Mohamed Kudus coming in? I'll let any one of you jump on.
He's impressive. I think he scored against us at Anfield, didn't he? Good finish.
Scored a belter.
He did, yeah. He did. No, he looks very good. He's done well for Ajax. Looked good again in the World Cup. So yeah, it's a good shout.
Yeah, I'd certainly like to bring him on board. Young player also, and very moldable. And as we've seen from a few of his quotes, one of his players that he grew up idolizing was Thiago. And if you're going to model your game, I think you can. There's very, very better players to pick from than Thiago. So I think that he's on the right track there.
I think Hellier made one where I was going to go for, which was Marcus Thuram. I thought he's out of contract at the end of the season as well. I would have. Yeah. I would like him to. Yeah, I was umming and ahhing between him and Trossard. I went with Trossard because of the Premier League. I agree with Neil. We need someone, and with Owen as well. We need someone who's got Premier League experience, and that's why those shouts have come in. And we want someone to kick the ground running. And people coming in from outside doesn't usually tend to happen. But I only went with Trossard because I think he's out of contract at the end of the season. There's a chat. I don't think there's that much money will be available. I was seeing it from John Henry's, wallet, point of view, you see. So hence why I went down that route.
Yeah, and speaking of John Henry's wallet, yesterday he was trending on Twitter here in the States for his penny pinching ways with the Red Sox. You have the Red Sox Nation absolutely furious at losing one of their homegrown stars again to another team in Major League Baseball. But that's a subject for another day, but it's still in the same vein as far as them pinching pennies, unfortunately. Another shout on the chat is Cody Gakpo. Cody Gakpo certainly added to his CV during this World Cup run. Looked the most dangerous out of Netherlands attacking players and buried shots with his head, right foot, and left foot. I think Cody Gakpo can certainly play across the front three, primarily a left-sided player, but certainly I think could be someone who can fit with us. What do you guys think as far as bringing on Cody Gakpo?
I liked him.
Yeah, I do. Go on. Sorry. No, go on, mate.
No, I liked him. I was impressed with him at the World Cup. Bit more pace than I thought he'd had from when I'd seen him before. So the only thing I think I'm a bit like Kev. I'm looking for sort of bargain basement options because of the way that we're expecting to spend money. So again, he'd be 50 million plus. So I don't know whether we'd go for that. I think he probably is attainable in January. He'd be a quality addition. But again, I think someone Louis has mentioned in the chat that he seems to only want to play as a striker, whereas I think we need someone that can cover on the wings as well. So good player though, very good player.
I think there's more chance of him going to United than coming to us. I think a lot of the Dutch players that are under who have played under the Ten Hag will automatically be, and he's one of them that I think will go to. But yeah, I did say about Trossard. I kind of knew we'd approached him, but I knew it was no chance of him getting him. But if you're asking me, I'd be going back in for him myself. I think it'd be a worth a shout. But that's just me. Scrimp and save. It's Christmas. Come on. Got utility bills to pay over here.
Yeah, the electric prices aren't going down. That's for sure.
That's why we're in the bargain basement, mate.
Gakpo, I think even if he does want to play as a striker, from what we've seen as far as what Klopp has done formation-wise, shifting to a 4-4-2 in the later run of matches that we've been on, I think he certainly would be a player who can play up front there with Nunez and revert Mo back to his right-sided role instead of playing up top. So I think that has potential to work, and obviously he's used to playing on the wings as well. So I think Gakpo would be tremendous, but he might be a little bit out of our price range at the moment if we're looking to solidify the midfield. Good shout here as well, also from Albert, and this is a player that I brought up before last season to replace Divock Origi, and that would be Ivan Toney. Unfortunately, Ivan Toney got himself into a little bit of trouble, and we don't know exactly the extent of how he will be punished, and that was due to betting. So until that kind of shakes out, I'm not sure what his future holds, unfortunately. Certainly love the player. I think he's tremendously talented, great as a striker, great holding up the ball, is tall, dominant in the air, and great at shooting penalties. So I think he would be great for us, but unfortunately, he's in a bit of hot water. I hope he's able to clear himself and get back to playing, but not looking all that promising.
Only 232 times, wasn't it?
Hey, I mean, it might have been the same bet, and he just kept hitting, and it wouldn't refresh. You know,
Hey, you never know.
To be fair, with Sturridge, I remember he did. I think it was not that many, and he was banned for an entire year.
Yeah. So this could be the end.
But luckily for Sturridge, that was during lockdown, so he could just go and train and didn't miss anything. But yeah, this is very different with Toney now, and it's potentially could mess up any big move to a United, Liverpool, City, one of their moves. I think this summer it was on, but now.
I think with Nunez, we probably wouldn't go for him now, would we? We'd see him as our kind of big man in the middle.
Unless Klopp decides to go with two up front.
Yeah, that would be the only way.
That'll be the only way. I think I agree, Neil. Unless he's willing to change his tactics and change his formation, I don't see us going in for another striker of that kind of ilk.
No, and he'd be pricey as well. He would be pricey.
Not anymore, though.
Well, no, probably not. Probably not.
Make a bet.
There's another good call. Someone that had loads of rumours of reports in the summer from Curious Carl. He's talking about Danjuma. So he'd obviously had a really, really good season at Villarreal last year. But I don't think things have gone as well for him this year. I don't know if he was in the Dutch squad or not.
I don't remember seeing him.
Yeah, so I think he's kind of drifted out of the news again, but he's still a relatively young player. I think he's only about 25. So yeah, it's another one that we've been linked with.
Oh, kind of lost you there, Neil. Yeah, good shout on Danjuma. He hasn't produced as well this season as last season. Unfortunately, I think he's only up to either 1 or 2 goals on La Liga so far, so certainly not producing to the levels of last season. But very, very good conversation today, guys. I hope all of you who were listening and live tuning with us enjoyed, and those of you on the chat, thank you so much for your participation. Certainly helps us here on the stream, getting that feedback and not only giving us ideas sometimes, but getting that engagement really gives us strength and makes us want to do a good job for you. For myself, Rigo, Owen, Kev, as well as Neil, we all like to thank you and wish you a great evening, and catch you next time on the LFC Transfer Room.